Hey, welcome to the next episode of Lockbox Lunatics. I'm Chad Kamp, Exit Realty Quinn out of Chandler, Arizona.
And I'm Steve Lambert out of Exit Realty Tri-City Life, Kennewick, Washington. And we're coming to you live
We're
today.
coming to you live
Well,
together.
together, I guess, not
Yes,
live, recorded live, but
but
together.
it's live right now.
Together. See, we're right here.
Yeah.
I can shake his hand.
Yeah.
What?
Reaching through the screen.
We did that magically.
So, do you know what today is?
Today is Friday,
What day?
June 13th.
13th. Today is Friday the 13th.
Oh my gosh, it is Friday the
Today's a
13th.
Friday. So,
I just realized that right now.
Okay, so which horror villain is the one that freaks you out the most, that scares you the most?
You know, the one that scared me the most, because growing up, I was really into horror movies for some odd reason. Well, my sister was, and she just dragged me along to the
Right,
movies.
right.
But it was Freddy Krueger.
Okay.
Freddy Krueger scared that to me. Oh, yeah.
So I've got one that scares me, and I got a story if you allow me.
All right,
So
absolutely.
Pennywise.
Oh gosh,
I've been freaked out with clowns my whole life.
Then
Then it
fair.
came out and only solidified that,
Oh gee,
right?
yeah.
So and now a story. I'm teenage. I'm out on a date, and yeah, let's pause this. We'll record it out. Okay.
You can edit that out. It might not pick it up. It will only pick up your voice.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, when I play it back, we'll do it, and then we'll leave it in if it doesn't.
Okay. Well, I like it.
They'll love watching this. Okay, so
Did
sorry.
you start recording again?
No, I just let it run. That's what I said. I'll edit it.
3, 2, 1.
So as a teenager, I go out on a date, and we're going to see one of the exorcists.
Oh,
Okay,
okay.
I don't remember which one.
That was a good one. That was the head spinning around
Yes,
too.
it was. So it was like
Pennsylvania as well.
it
Where
was.
that's out of. Sorry.
It was where I'm
Amityville.
from. So this was the fifth or sixth installment, and there was a scene where they're in the hospital, and you hear dripping, drip, 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 right? And they go into this room, and there's a curtain. So they're following this nurse. There's this curtain. So they're building the suspense up.
Nothing good happens behind that
She
curtain.
rips that curtain back, and there's an empty bed with a water that had fallen over and was dripping.
Oh,
Okay,
yeah.
so we all let there was no shock there. She leaves the room. The next thing you know, you just see this curtain coming after her with a knife or something.
Oh
like
my
that.
gosh, dude.
Just scared the daylight out of
Freaky
me.
because you have the big letdown. You're expecting it, you're building,
Yeah.
then nothing. You're like,
Yeah,
okay.
and you're
And then they
the
get you
tension.
when they're on.
They get you. So I bring this girl home. I take her to the door. Now I'm terrified because I just think of the sheep.
Oh gosh, yeah.
I walk her to the door, let her get in the door. I run back to my car. And all the way I'm running back to my car, I'm looking behind me, jump in my car, and I never worried about locking the doors ever. I lock all my doors. And all the way home, driving home, I'm looking behind me, waiting for that sheep to follow
Oh
me.
gosh, that's a
Yeah,
trip.
that stuck with me for years.
Oh,
I think it's
man.
hilarious now. I literally was scared to death on that
Well, it's
drive.
funny because, like you said, they build it up, to where
Yeah.
what I hate that they do now. I don't hate it, I should say. It's pretty ingenious, but it freaks me out every time. Is when they show you a video and they're like, "Hey, just stare at the screen and just wait for this," and it's just the screen, and you're just staring at like an empty road, and all of
Right.
a sudden that thing just like it just pops in across the screen like.
Yeah.
Oh, dude, that freaks me out every time. It gets me
Yeah.
every time. I know it's coming, but I can't stop
Yeah,
watching.
you always
Like, I
mess your
have to watch
doors
it.
just a little bit.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. Well,
Anyway.
cool, man. Well, hey, so we're in Las Vegas this week, and we're actually down here for an Exit Regional kind of like leadership summit. And so we
Right.
actually covered some really good information
We
with a
did.
lot of our fellow Exit brokers,
We did.
and kind of something that was kind of cool. It was interesting. As I was walking over here for us to do this, I saw this article on the news feed today, and it said U.S. Opens this week. I'm a big golfer, so ta-da! And a lot of good golf courses in your area, by the way.
Oh, yeah,
So
definitely.
definitely a ton of them down in the Phoenix Metro. So um, they had an article there, and it said, "What's the difference between a pro, a scratch golfer, and you?" And I was
Oh,
like,
wow.
right? And it got me thinking. I'm like,
That's like 40 strokes for me.
oh gosh, right? Yeah,
That's
you and me both, right? Yeah, exactly. It's like, like that old Robin Williams. Every time you hit it, you feel like you're having a stroke. That's why they call it a stroke, right?
That's right.
It's a great piece, by the way. Terrible language, not safe for work, but definitely a
Right,
funny one to
right.
watch. But the interesting thing is then it got me thinking about like in our industry, And obviously we talk about real estate stuff, the good, bad, the indifferent, the fun, whatever. But it got me thinking about being an agent and being a broker and being a realtor
Oh,
and being a professional
yeah.
realtor, like, right? Because
Right,
there's a
right,
lot of agents and realtors throughout the United States, a ton of them.
right.
And we know a whole bunch of them do it part-time. And this isn't to knock part-time
No,
agents,
no.
but
I started part-time.
right, we all
Yeah,
start somewhere.
yeah.
But when you think about what we encounter and what we deal with on a daily basis with our clients and the amount of money that we're handling for our clients,
Right.
because it's typically the biggest transaction of
It
anybody's
is.
life.
It
There's
is.
a ton of money at stake. There's a lot of stress involved in the
Right.
situation. And if you're an agent that is a professional agent, because this is what you do all day long, this is your bread and butter, this is what you live, eat, breathe, drink, is real estate, how important that becomes in a transaction. I know you've recently had some transactions, and I have as well, where you have to get creative with the process in order to
Right.
come up with something that's going to help that person get to the finish line, which is ultimately not about us and not about the agent on the other side, not about title or lending, but about
Exactly.
helping our clients achieve their dreams of home ownership,
Exactly.
right? And we understand that's a stressful time for a client because it's a very truncated amount of time. A lot of professions, people have a lot of time to work with people. We have a very
Right.
finite amount of time to work with somebody. It
We have
might be a short,
deadlines.
yeah, it
We
might
have
be a
short
short
deadlines,
30 days,
5 days,
the
10 days.
months,
Yeah,
yeah.
and then 30 days.
And then all the deadlines within that. And so there's
Right.
things that we just have to really be super vigilant about, and we'll typically have multiple deals going on. And so it just kind of got me thinking about our industry, right? And that headline. And it was just because I know, like you said, if I can go out and play on a US Open course, oh my gosh, it's going to be carnage for me. It'd just
Right.
be, I don't even know
So
if I'd get it done.
you shared an analogy the other night with regards to a gentleman that you were watching golf. How when he approached the ball, he had a very setup, right?
Very specific. Yeah.
Very specific. Share that with
Oh,
me.
his routine.
Yeah,
Yeah. So it didn't matter if he was putting, hitting an iron, or hitting a driver, approach shot, or whatever. He was very specific in his setup every single time. He stepped up the same way. He put his hands down the same way. He brought his hands together on the club the same way. He did this little thing with his hands every single time. And the cool part about that,
and his toes, clear down to
oh,
his
yeah,
toes
clear down to his
and his feet.
toes.
Yeah,
Yeah, and the way he wiggled and then set his body, and then it
right.
was like the timing even. And I was blown away by that because I was just like, he was so consistent with his game, and I'm like, this guy, he's like a plus
Yeah,
five handicap, which is insane, folks. Like a plus five is getting like PGA Tour level. He was qualifying for the U.S. Open. It was a U.S. Open qualifier. He didn't make it, but he came close. But the bottom line is that I started realizing he's having success because this is what he
right.
does every single time, right? And when I think about like the professional agent versus not
Right.
professional, a lot of times it comes down to not even systems, but the consistency in how you approach your business and what you do with it.
How frequently would you say that gentleman worked on practicing his approach, practicing his swing,
Oh,
ever before entering a tournament?
oh gosh, years, right?
Yeah, he's
I mean, we talked to
practiced,
him and he had played in college for a while and then he kind of got out of the game after
right?
college and he got into a career and then he was fortunate enough to kind of get out of that career early and still be young enough to do this and to try out where he's at. But that is years, probably decades.
Yes,
He's in his early 30s, so he started playing golf when he was 12 or 13 or 10 or
right,
something like that. So a
right,
couple decades worth of honing in that skill set to make it look easy.
right,
But the amount of time that goes into making it look easy, right? Because our job's super easy. We hear that all
right,
the time.
right.
You guys don't do anything.
Well, and even with our agents, we in our meeting yesterday, it was brought up that, as we're trying to encourage and direct our agents as to how to do things, they'll look at us as the broker and they'll say,
Mhm.
well, that's easy for you.
Yeah.
What do you think that I was born with this? Now granted, there are some folks that are just born with charisma and the ability to speak. I'm not that guy.
Yeah, we have to train ourselves on
We have
that,
to train
right?
ourselves. So it's that practice.
Yeah.
And the worst place to practice is at the dining room table with your client.
Oh gosh.
That's like
Yeah.
that'd be like me grabbing my golf bags, meeting you over here at Dragon Ridge,
Yeah.
and me trying
Hope for the best.
me trying to seal the deal against this guy.
Yeah,
You
like I'm
know,
gonna learn, like I'm gonna like you're gonna, and it's interesting. And the scary part is, or maybe is that does happen in our industry.
every
I hate to say it,
every
but it
day.
does happen, and you're playing with a lot of people's money,
Yeah,
and there was a statistic I think that they put out that we just recently saw. that the biggest amount of wealth or assets with folks 60 and over
Yes.
is their home.
Right. Right.
So this is a huge asset that we're helping people with, that we're not financial advisors, but gosh darn, we're helping them make a very massive decision that does impact a lot of people's overall majority of Americans' portfolio when they're looking to retire or do something in the future.
Right.
And so there's a lot of responsibility that comes with that. And you can't take that lightly. And so it is kind of funny though when people say it, we make it look easy. I take that. I mean, I laugh about it, but I take it as a great compliment because that means we've honed our skill and our craft to the point where we can be considered experts, and I love that.
Right.
But it's also a constant learning process. I know you read, I read, we're constantly going through stuff like that. So,
and especially with all this AI that's out there now.
Oh God, right? Yeah.
So I find as I get older that keeping up with technology is a little bit more difficult. Things don't click for me just as they used to. 20 years ago, 25 years ago, I could do anything from a technological perspective. Today I look at AI and my mind just is blown away with how many advances. And how do I implement that into my business to be able to utilize it? But also then the trade-off is, how do I still give every single client that personal touch and that care? You can't, and that's why I don't think AI is going to take over the industry from a supportive position, from a follow-up position to be able to make sure that nobody falls through the cracks. But actually there's phone calls, AI phone calls. I took an AI phone call from a lender probably a month ago.
Yeah.
And it was hilarious because they asked me a question, I responded. They asked me the very same question in the same way, and the light went off. Oh, this is AI. So I said, "Is this AI?" And they said, "Yes, this is definitely AI." So at that point in time, I ended the call because I said, if I'm not important enough for you to pick up the phone to start building that relationship with me, don't call me.
And I think you're right. AI is going to definitely impact, I'll say, the back end operations of real estate, right?
Yes, definitely.
But it's interesting, and I love that how you put that out there, because the phone call specifically. We have a client that we helped last year who's a programmer for a very large company that everybody would know and does program and IT.
Right.
Super savvy at finding all the things he needs to find online, all the, the properties, the details about it, all that good stuff.
Right.
Yeah. But at the end of the day, he said, I still want you there with me to guide me through this process because I feel like I need to talk to somebody about that. And so the human interaction side of real estate and the human, just who we are as people, we're still looking for that validation and being able to have an expert lead us down that path, right?
That human interaction.
Yeah. And I think AI is going to be phenomenal in our industry for definitely cleaning up back end operations. I think creating more consistency on the paperwork side. Well, actually, and potentially helping mitigate potential lawsuits and things like that, by making sure all the boxes are checked and that everybody's doing the things they should be doing. I think that's a big part of it, but I still think, and it may help us even be more effective in our outreach and connecting with our clients when we need to at specific times by helping kind of fill in the gaps. But at the end of the day, when you look at just humankind, right, for thousands and millions of or whatever years, people always want to connect. They started out with some cavemen running around, and then they're like, hey, let's make a little village and let's make this, and then they become a city and a town, right? Well, people want to connect.
If you just look back, 5 years ago when COVID hit, everybody retreated, everyone became hermits. That human interaction stopped occurring. And then after a while, folks got tired of that.
Yeah, they were like, I got to meet.
Yeah, I got to get out and I got to meet people. I need to be able to get out and rub shoulders with folks and have conversations, enjoy meals with individuals, go golfing with individuals. And so AI, has its purpose. But if I were to give you an advice as an agent, is don't forget that personal touch. That's the cherry on top. Right. So you have all these systems in place to make sure that you don't drop the ball, and that AI can certainly answer some of the more short, quick questions that are pretty standard. I teach my agents, hey, and I have scripts for pretty much everything. What I mean by scripts is it doesn't mean that I'm not giving a personal touch. It means that I deliver the same message to every single client the same way in the same process, so they all get the same level of service. So when I get a phone call from from someone who wants to refer an agent, or either an agent and or a buyer or seller to me, that person has gone through and experienced those scripts right? And
Yeah.
experience that level of service. Let's call it that because that's what it is.
Yeah.
And they expect me to give that same level of service to that buyer and that client. So AI is not gonna, can't replace that. But there again, it goes back to the golf.
Yeah.
It's that practice.
Yeah, it's the practice. I love that you integrate that because that was going to be my question to you. I was going to say, was we're trying to define who are our professional golfer realtors, right? Who
Right,
are our
right,
pros? Well, how do we get them from you to scratch to pro? Like, what are the things that we do in each of our respective offices, our industry,
right,
our or exit as an organization as a whole as well, because we're obviously exit
right,
franchises, and
right.
so,
And I like the franchise because we all have the access to the same information, and that helps
yeah,
create that consistency
yep.
within our brand, within the exit brand,
Exactly. And that's huge.
right?
We always talk about being consistent in what we
Right,
do, right, for success. And so what Chad's talking about is we have a really cool back end system within Exit so that if I'm holding an open house in Washington State and he's holding an open house in Arizona, is that we have the ability to have the flyers and everything look exactly the same. So from a client's perspective, they're getting that gold standard
right,
professionalism from state to state and office to office. And and it's interesting. I used to be in healthcare, and they always talk about healthcare and grading hospitals on what is their standard of care, right? So
right,
what is
right.
our standard of care for our clients? Well, from a
Exactly.
marketing perspective, we have this incredible back end that keeps us aligned and keeps it consistent for our clients. And not just on a buy side, obviously on the sales side, super important
Oh
that
yeah,
way too,
most
because clients
yeah,
can have this really beautiful representation. And then our training, like we each have different training, we have training modules, but I know you have weekly meetings, I have weekly meetings, and we bring in experts from different
right.
areas. I brought in a top salesperson from a Ford dealership in our area, and I said,
Yeah,
and he said, I've never been asked to talk to anybody before, and I said, but you crush it. You're number one in your organization, and consistently on the West Coast. You're in sales. It's about human connection, and
it's yeah,
especially, and he's doing it at a very high level. But the cool part is that he wasn't transactional. So he was using a CRM, the only guy there doing
oh
it.
wow.
And he would just meet with people and he didn't try and sell you a car that day. He'd say, just let me know when it's good for you and let me
Yeah,
know, just keep in touch with me. And it was such a different approach. And he was crushing it
yeah,
because he looked at the business from a little bit different lens. And he didn't grow up in that business, but then he put systems into place and then he was very consistent with his approach.
right.
And he crushed it. And so I said, come talk to my people, tell them about your process. And he had
That's
a very
brilliant.
specific
That's
process.
brilliant.
It was cool.
We had breakfast together and we were talking, some of the topics were the differences between Washington and Arizona,
Yeah.
right? And so that's why it's very important that, you find a brokerage, and Exit is very good at this,
Hmm.
that the brokers are sitting talking about, specific local events, not just on a
Yeah.
national level.
Yeah.
Yes, we cover the national level. We take a look at what's going on across the industry, but also there's differences in each state. There's going to be different unique things. We were talking to one of the brokers here in Vegas, and they have a high issue with radon.
Yeah.
Okay,
I
and
didn't
so
know.
and it's because of yeah, it's because of the rock structure here. And so I've been aware of radon because I grew up with radon issues in
Okay.
Pennsylvania,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But in Arizona, unless if you're up in the mountains, but then the valley, we don't deal with that.
Yeah.
And so you've got to have somebody with that centralized knowledge. You were talking about water supply
Yeah.
up on top of a mountain, right?
Yeah.
So you need to have
Yeah.
you need
Right.
to have
Yeah.
someone who like knows the area and knows the challenges and knows how to overcome those
And
challenges.
so when we start talking about circling back to you bringing in AI into this and what is AI's role in it, the
Right,
ability for AI to kind of just filter data at an insanely fast
right.
pace and spit out an answer is phenomenal.
It's great. Yeah,
Where the cool thing is about the human side of real estate and that works in conjunction with AI is the hyper local knowledge, right?
exactly.
And that's exactly to what you're talking about is marrying those two things together so that you're truly an expert and a
Right,
professional in your area. And, and as agents and as consumers, that's what we should all be looking for. As agents, we should hold ourselves very accountable to every day figuring out exactly what's happening in our area. I love to get up and I read national news and I read regional news and I read local news and I try and figure out how is our local stuff going to interact regionally or what's happening nationally
right.
and regionally. It may impact me not today, but pretty soon because things are changing and moving.
Yeah,
And
you can have a local issue that's only going to impact you and not going to impact the
mhm,
region. But
exactly.
from a national and regional perspective, it's going to impact everybody.
Mhm.
So you need to definitely hit all three of those components when you're looking at news and trying to stay on top of the trends and what's going on in the area.
Yeah, yeah,
Your market is much different than the market in the valley. And so, I just can't, I can't go to Washington and spew the numbers that I know about the Valley because they don't apply there.
But here's the cool part. If I was to give you our numbers, because we cover it, so Chad and his meetings and me and my meetings weekly, we cover all the data, the days on market, the absorption rates, all the different things. And so the cool part is that we could interchange those, and
Oh,
based
yeah.
upon the fact that we are basically students of our industry, I can get a pretty quick read on what
Right.
I can of what the vibe is anyways, or at least in terms of what the market's starting to do. You give me 2 or 3 weeks of that data and I can start getting a
Yeah.
picture, right? And that's so important because a lot of agents that I know don't look at that data. They just wing it, And if
Right.
somebody's like,
Right.
"Hey, can you tell me is this a good price on this house?" They're like, "Well, let me pull comps." Well, they
Right.
should know that going in off the top of their head, really, kind of, right?
One thing that we cover is what's the most common question that you're asked as a realtor?
Mhm.
And is how's the
How's
market?
the market?
Right.
Everybody wants to know.
Everyone wants to know. So if all you're doing is regurgitating what you hear on the news, and
You're
because
not, yeah.
let's face it, the news has to sell
Oh
viewership,
gosh, yeah.
right?
And their
So
data is generally
they
so far
they
behind.
have to sensationalize everything. And so, right now in the Valley, they're touting it's a buyer's market. Well, no, we're at a 4.65 months supply in the Valley.
Mhm.
That's not a buyer's market. That's becoming more of a balanced market.
Yes.
When we get over the 6 month supply, now we're into the buyer's
Right?
market.
Yeah.
So right now, everyone has to play together very nicely in the sandbox.
Yeah.
Buyers have to concede, sellers have to concede, everyone has to be considerate. When it's a seller's market, the seller gets their way. When it's a buyer's market, the buyer's going to tend to
What
get
I'm
their
trying to
way.
think, the last time nationally we had equilibrium was probably 2017, 16, maybe. It's been a
It's
while
been a
since the
while.
market's
It's
been
been
in
some time.
equilibrium. And I
Yeah,
think that, buyers have been getting kind of
the
been
shaft.
getting the shaft, man. I mean,
Against
during
shaft.
COVID, it was
Yeah.
super not, it was,
Oh, it was not cold at all.
a 4 day supply of inventory was
Yeah,
ridiculous.
yeah.
And so now that we're starting to see, like you said, that 4 to 6 month, that's that transition period to either becoming a buyer's market or a seller's market, right?
It's a healthy market,
It's a
really.
healthy market. So
Right,
anytime you're in that 4 to 6, that's a good place because everybody's coming at it, like you said, looking for a fair deal. They're being
right,
equitable in the situation, right?
right.
And so I think that's interesting. And again, tying it back into professional agents and their training and all that, understanding what that is, understanding how those rates work, how absorption rates work, pending sales, days on market, how that all ties together, and price point inflections too, like breaking it down to, hey, if we adjust your price down or we have to adjust your price, like where are we going to pick that price to make your house sell in a reasonable amount of time and
Right.
maximizing your profit? And then on the buy side, what key elements and things can we look at when we're looking for our buyers to help them get the deal that they're looking for,
Right.
right? To be
To help
fair to
negotiate.
them and help them
Yeah.
earn equity and grow in their real estate holdings or journey, So
Right. So as we wrap today up, first off, thanks for viewing
yeah.
and watching this. Now we're in Vegas. Are you a gambler? And what's your favorite gambling activity if you are?
I could be considered a gambler, maybe not in the traditional sense of sitting in front of a slot machine, but I would say that if I do gamble though, it's going to be a slot machine probably. I
Okay.
just like to pull and see if the thing can line up.
Right, right.
Or the craps table. I think that's
Okay.
kind of fun. I
Okay.
think that's kind of fun because I did win money. I took $20 and made 100 one
Nice.
time, just like in 2 seconds, and I was
Nice.
like, oh, that was awesome. Then I walked away.
Yeah.
What was the other part of your question? Sorry.
What was your favorite gambling? So,
Oh, okay.
so as far
How
as
about you?
me, I'm not much of a gambler. I have gambled. I've been in a casino gambling probably 3 or 4 times in my lifetime.
Yeah.
But the biggest gamble I typically make is the meal I eat before I either fly or drive long distance. That's probably the biggest gamble I take, right? And my
Fair
wife,
enough.
my
Fair
my
enough.
wife doesn't take that risk. She will go for days without eating if we're driving across country. So I'm not gonna eat. I'm not gonna eat. I'm not gonna take
Okay,
that risk.
then
I'm
on
like, oh,
that
let's grab Taco Bell.
then on that point, then that would be bad one. Then on that point, if I'm flying out in the morning, anytime before noon, I will not have my coffee until after I'm on the plane. I'll get coffee and I'll bring it with me until I'm on the plane. I won't have it beforehand though.
Okay,
I just won't. I just can't.
that's some
Stomach-
words of wisdom right there. For
Yeah,
you.
there you go, man.
Yeah,
There you go.
yeah.
Right on.
So anyway, hey, thanks again for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe.
Yep.
We appreciate your guys' time and look forward to next week. Have a great Friday the 13th and stay safe.
Be good.
And watch out for Pennywise.
Exactly.